Oceans Week is over. So now what? We had a great week. I posted every day, talked about the ocean every day. We saw a lot of different posts and announcements from various organizations on why they love the ocean, why the ocean is important, what we need to do to protect the ocean. But now that's all done, what happens? Right? A lot of organizations, they build to this day. They build to this week. They build to June 8th to make these big announcements. But now what? Well, we're going to talk about that on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast because the fight is not over. It's just beginning, and we need all hands on deck. So let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, and what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the aftermath of Oceans Week and Oceans Day. It's still Oceans Month, but I find there's just such a buildup for this special week and this special day. You know, there are conferences that are surrounded. Upwell, which talks about ocean justice and smart representation and representation within the field of conservation as well as within stakeholder groups in conservation. Very, very important topic. We also had CHOW, the Capitol Hill Oceans Week, which is where government in the U.S. and other groups get together and talk about a lot of the stuff that goes on during the week, during the year, during the month, and how we can make it better and how, projects are going. Like we get updates on projects, especially government projects in the U.S. Canada has their own sort of Oceans Week, and there's just a lot going on. A lot of announcements, organizations build up to this. A lot of times they'll keep their announcements until this past week, until Oceans Day, and there's a big push. But then the week ends. That day ends, the week ends. It's Monday, it's June 10th, and what do we do now? What do you do as an individual? What do we do as a community? And what do we do as an ocean community from not only a national perspective, but an international perspective? I live in Canada. Some of you live in the US, the UK, Australia, India, Brazil, Italy, Greece, South Africa, all over the world. We have listeners, and it's wonderful to have that. You know why? Because we get to talk about what's important, and that's protection of the ocean. No matter where you live, you are touched by the ocean, whether you know it or not. Every second breath that you take is due to the ocean, the oxygen that's produced by the ocean, right? We all go on vacation so that we can get near the ocean. We want to be on a beach so that we can look out into that ocean blue and we get to enjoy its tranquility. We get to enjoy its ocean species if we're in the water, and if we're below the water, we get to enjoy just sort of that pressure that we feel from the ocean, kind of keeping us nice and cozy and watching all the ocean species do their thing. It's a wonderful and important part of our lives. It's probably the most important part of the lives, but we treat it like crap. Not you and I. Well, sometimes we do without even knowing. And, I find there's a bit of hypocrisy around Oceans Week and Oceans Day to make it a big deal. Like, it's great that we have a day, but we need it full year round. We need to drive the narrative and conversation that protection of the ocean should be at the utmost priority. For everybody, for every government. We see governments prioritizing the economy, which obviously is important, but the environment always takes a back seat. We see people online still denying climate change. As an example, I posted on my Facebook page, just on my personal page, a meme, right? It was like a cartoon that talked about the ocean. They talked about climate change. They talked about how, the ocean hit its top, over the last 12 months, it broke records in actual temperature, increases in temperature, broke records, and it's been, it hasn't been in the news. It's been in the news for the last 12 months, and we just kind of skirt over it. And that was sort of the funny but sad part of that meme. And I had comments actually be like, that's funny, but I'm also sad. It's like, why isn't this on the mainstream media? And somebody posted, yeah, it is on the mainstream media. We just don't pay attention to it, right? It may not be on our news feed because for Facebook in Canada, we don't get news anymore. There's a long story behind that. but it might not be, in our, vicinity. We are all tailored by social media and by, different news media agencies, tailored the articles that were fed to us based on our past actions of whether we engage or read a video or listen to a video, watch a video, listen to a podcast, read an article, and they'll feed us similar things that are around that, but we don't get the whole breadth. One good thing about getting a newspaper delivered to your door every day or every week was that you got to read the entire paper. It was there for you. Even though we found out that was tailored towards certain areas, but those, you still had a breadth and a diversity of articles. So if you were one of those people who wrote, I know my dad was and I was, where we read the paper almost beginning to end, you would get that diversity of news. But we don't get that anymore. We just sort of get what's fed to us based on our past actions on the internet. And if you don't trust me, just look at how, if you look at something on Amazon, how it shows up on every social media site. You're like, how do they know? Sometimes I even talk about it. I just talk about it. And my phone serves up all the same things of what I just talked about. Very, very creepy. Regardless of that, I just get on these tangents sometimes. Regardless of that, right? The ocean is important. We don't all get it to our mainstream media. This post that I posted, I have a friend of mine, right? An acquaintance of mine that I used to coach hockey with. Nice guy, gets into a little conspiracy theories. Just a tad. I'm being sarcastic. He's really into conspiracy theories. He posts a video about how climate change is just a driver for scientists to continue with their funding. I didn't watch the full video because it was a crock, but that was the video that's perpetuating along YouTube, essentially driving the false narrative that the only reason why we're talking about climate change is because scientists need the funding so that they can continue talking about climate change. Imagine that. All you scientists out there, all the money that you're getting, imagine that, the rich scientists out there that are studying marine biology and climate change, that are making all this money, that are in their mansions, driving their multiple cars and their Lamborghinis and their Ferraris, right? All of us out there, they're talking about climate change. They're getting paid and getting funded by the government to continue to perpetuate this false narrative that climate change is real and it's affecting the earth. We just do it for the money. I don't know what happened to my check, but I'm not getting paid. Maybe think about the narrative that the reason why people are getting funded to do climate change is because climate change is changing everything we see with our eyes. You look at the trends, you look outside, you look at the last year and temperatures, and it is killing records from last year, which destroyed records from the previous years. We get people still sharing this crock of crap on YouTube and sharing it being like, oh, by the way, I know you're a scientist and all you've done all this work and all this research, but this YouTube video tells something different. It says you're making a lot of money on this false narrative that climate change thing and we need to change because of it. Absolute BS. But we still get people who say this stuff, who believe this stuff, and who share this stuff. And you can't stop it. We cannot stop it. But those are not the people that we need to talk to. And it's one of the reasons why, when I look at my podcast and I look at my sort of strategy and everybody asks, who's your audience? My audience is not the climate deniers. They are long gone. They are long gone. My goal is to talk to people and target people who want to know more about the ocean. They want to know what is happening. They want to know some of the studies that are happening, some of the changes that are happening, right? Some of the projects that are going on, some of the people involved in those projects, so that they can make a better decision. They can believe what they hear. That's why I'm doing this. That's exactly why I'm doing this. And if I can show just that one person that they can make a difference, then I've done my job. And I'm not talking about how it's up to each and every one of us to change. If we all change, then the world's going to change. It's not just an individual change. And today I'm going to talk about three ways you can help change the ocean, but it's not from only an individual perspective, right? It's a perspective of how can we lead by example from an individual perspective, but also get involved with our community and our regions and our politics to make bigger changes, to influence bigger changes, to show people that it matters what we do and what we say. And the first thing is, and I've talked about this before, it's talking about it. It is talking about it on social media, talking about it at family dinners, at family events, talking about it with your friends. And you have to be strategic about it. You don't want to get into an argument with a family member that's a climate denier. What you do is you want to speak to the people who want to know more. I know a lot of family members who just don't know how bad it is out there. They're just still not informed. Because it's not in their peripherals, right? When they go through life, it's not in their peripherals. You know, some of them are new parents. So they got little kids and their kids are running around. They're pooping everywhere. You know, they're touching everything. And especially when they start to walk and everything, they're running around all over the place. You're focused on raising your kids. You're focused on making sure your kids don't hurt themselves by running into a wall or whatever that might be, eating a crayon or eating glue or whatever that might be, right? So you're focused on that. You're not focused on what's happening around the world. When you're in university, you might just be focused on what's happening on your campus and not what's happening outside. I remember when I went to university, I know this is very naive of me to say this and ignorant of me to say this. I didn't know Princess Diana died the first week that I was in university. I didn't know until a year later when I was back in the summer and my parents mentioned it. No clue. We are distracted by life, and it's not always in our peripheral what's happening in the ocean. So to talk about it to people, to bring it up, and to be able to speak to it, and be able to be informed by listening to things like this podcast or other marine biology podcasts that are out there, reading articles, staying in touch. You know, there's a lot of great information out there. And being able to talk about it, you know, and if somebody offers you well, that's not true, you can say, look, you have your perspective, you have your conspiracy theories, but the thing is climate change is here, it's happening. So if you don't want to listen, that's fine. You don't have to listen, you don't have to believe me. But for those of you who want to make better choices, this is what you can do, and feel free to ask me questions because I know a lot about the subject matter. And I know a lot of the people who are listening, a lot of you who are listening to this episode, you know, some of you are early career scientists. Some of you are very well educated, even if you're not early career scientists or didn't go to school for oceans, you're very, very well educated in what's happening in the ocean just by the circles that you are going into and what you have been able to accomplish in terms of reading and digesting the material, not only from this podcast and listening to this podcast, but also doing other things. And you're very, very knowledgeable in what's happening in the ocean and the narratives that are happening around climate change and ocean protection and what's needed, and the fact that ocean justice is really playing a big role these days, marine protected areas, all these solutions, you're very aware, which is great. So now talk about it. Talk about it. Build that confidence in yourself to be able to discuss it with other people. It'll help with that anxiety that you feel when you are actually worried about stuff. Talk about it. Talk about it to people. Talk about it to your friends. Talk about it to your colleagues. You know, add a fun sort of tidbit of information at your meetings, morning meetings with your team, you know, at work. You know, try and make it positive. Try and make it light. Try and make it fun. Hey, here's a project of somebody who succeeded in helping a local community get over, you know, their climate change worries or their climate change consequences. You know, there are stories out there. You know, there are plenty of stories out there that you can talk to. Right? Some people are doing some great things. Healthy Seas. We just had an interview with Veronica Mikos from Healthy Seas. She talked about, you know, cleaning up abandoned aquaculture pens. That's pretty cool stuff. And people are out doing some really cool things. You know, it may not help the greenhouse gases that are, you know, that are increasing in our atmosphere, but it helps with making a local community be able to enjoy their oceans without destroying their community, without destroying their ecosystem, their ocean ecosystem. Those are great things. Share that with people. Show that there are people out there who are doing wonderful, wonderful things. And I think that helps. So talking to people really helps. And then leading by example. And there's a few ways you can lead by example. The first is just making sure that you are trying to overcome the convenience of wastefulness in terms of living. So not buying water bottles if you can't, like single-use water bottles, Gatorades, vitamin water, all that kind of stuff is just bad to have. It's convenient, especially if you're out on a hot day as we come into the summer months, or most of us are coming into the summer months, where it's really, really hot and you're walking and you didn't bring your reusable water bottle with water that keeps it nice and cold. And then you're like, I need something, and I'm going to go and get a Gatorade. I want that sugary drink or that vitamin water or just a regular water. That's not the best thing to do for the environment. But if you need that water, take that water. But prepare yourself next time. Learn from that mistake, right? Learn from that and say, I want to actually just bring a water bottle wherever I go. You can get some that hook onto a backpack or hook onto something. Like, there's lots of ways to go. It's just you have to think about that ahead of time. It's kind of like, when you have an EV. Everybody's like, oh, it must be really hard to wait at a supercharging station or having to charge up your car, for a half hour while you're on a trip. Sure. Yeah, it is. But it's not that inconvenient. When I tell people, I drove to Wisconsin for the CrossFit Games when I first got my Tesla. Great car. Love the car. I want to test out, want to drive with my friends. I want to show off a little bit. I love the car. And so planned out a trip. It planned out where the supercharging stations were. It would take a half hour to 20 to a half hour, 20 minutes to a half hour to charge up. Great. Charge those up. And we got out of the car, we get to our supercharging station. We never had to wait. We would charge up 20 minutes, 30 minutes, which, to be honest, we're all in our 40s. Being in a car for, 4 hours, 3.5, 4 hours, it hurts our knees. We're CrossFitters. It hurts our knees. Getting out, stretching our legs, going to grab something to eat. There's all different ways that you can plan around. You just have to plan ahead. Adding on maybe 20 minutes to 45 minutes to our trip, not a big deal. Not that big of a deal. You just have to plan ahead. You have to know ahead, and it's okay. I don't need to get there in a rush, right? So I think, there's a lot of myths that need to get busted around protecting the ocean, around doing good things. Lead by example. Talk about the conveniences and talk about the best things about, if you have a plug-in hybrid or an EV or hybrid, say, or if you have a water bottle everywhere you go and someone's like, oh yeah, I find it really inconvenient. I always forget my water bottle. And you're like, yeah, I did too. And then I started to say, hey, what is my priority? I want to make sure that I'm drinking water from home and not drinking sugary water for the diet. All right, let's go. We're going to get that. I'm just going to bring my water bottle. It takes a little bit to get used to, but then you get used to it when you put it in. Put in reminders in your phone or whatever that might be. Right? And then same thing with buying clothes. Okay, well, I can go to the thrift store and buy clothes for a third of the price, get the same type of clothes, right? You put it in the wash, boom, wear it, you're good. Now you spent half the money or a third of the money that you were planning on spending, and you probably got more clothes. So there's benefits to the ways you can lead by example, and you just have to tell people the positives and stop focusing on the negatives for everybody, right? So I think that helps. So leading by example in that, talking about it, then leading by example in your individual contribution. Then there's the community contribution and also the political contribution. So the community contribution is more of, how can I help an organization, protect the ocean or protect the waterways where I live? And that there are a lot of organizations out there like Trout Unlimited. There's a lot of different organizations. Some are salmon based, and some are just river protection organizations that will do beach or river cleanups or beach cleanups or coastal cleanups. They'll go in and they'll do educational things or tour. You can volunteer as a tour guide, and you can do all these different things to help that organization out by volunteering your time. You're out in nature, you're talking to people, you're volunteering, and it's a great way to do things, right? So leading, through your community and getting involved in your community from an environmental perspective is really important. Then the political aspect. Talk to your, government representative at the local, state, provincial, and federal level, right? These are the people that you helped elect or other people elected, but they represent you in government. So show them, whether they're the party you supported or not, show them how you believe, what you believe in. The more people that stand up and say it, the more they have to listen. And you don't have to be aggressive about it. Sometimes you might have to. You don't have to be aggressive about it. You can just, these are people too. Politicians are people too. They have their values. Some of them are more nature-based. Some of them aren't, right? But if they aren't and they're not listening to you, you mobilize the people in your area to either hold a protest or vote the other way, right? And for a common reason. If they're not listening to you, that means they're not truly representing you. Now, you might not get ahead on one person representative, but you might get ahead on another. And that might be, voting for a different party for the environment. That's really what it comes down to. So there's a lot of different ways that you can lead, right? From an individual perspective, from speaking up to an individual perspective to community-based and then politically based. But these are things that you can do. So now that Ocean's Day is over, Ocean's Week is over, Ocean's Month is almost over, we're halfway through almost, it doesn't stop protecting the ocean, right? We should be learning about the ocean all the time. We are dependent on the ocean. And we should make sure that people around us are always learning as well, in positive, light, and entertaining ways. But that is what we need to do now that Ocean's Day is over. Is we need to continue the fight. We need to continue the education and the awareness until we can protect the ocean, until we can get climate change under wraps. It's a long fight. It's not short. It's not going to be easy. There are a lot of people, like the guy that I talked about, who are sharing, crazy YouTube videos, to politicians who are listening to the fossil fuel industry. But we're changing minds. We're changing minds. In fact, there was an interview with a fossil fuel person in Canada. He works for the fossil fuel industry or owns a fossil. I don't remember. He's in it. And he was concerned that one of the parties in Canada, the federal parties in Canada, does not have a plan to tackle climate change. Now that's ironic, isn't it? But it's working. By talking about it, complaining about it, protesting about it, acting on it, leading by it. We can change. We can change the narrative. We can change the focus and the priority to that of the top priorities of protecting the ocean. So that's what I got for you today. This is a community, so I'd love to hear from you. If you want to hit me up on Instagram at How to Protect the Ocean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you plan on doing after this Ocean's Day or what you did before Ocean's Day. I'd love to hear what you're doing or what you would like to do. And if you ever need any advice, I'm here for you to talk. And of course, there's a community that's coming. It's coming in July. I got an app coming. I want you to go speakupforblue.com/ocean app. I'm going to be putting up some updates this week. I can't wait for this app to come out. I can't wait for you to be a part of this community again, continuing to be a part, but this is a little bit more intimate. We get to talk to each other. We get to hear from each other. We get to hear our values and hear what we want for the ocean. It's going to be a lot of fun. Just go to speakupforblue.com/ocean app, APP, all one word. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.